Region 2. There's more to the title than that, but you'll be able to search it on my channel pretty easily. It's a good resource because in that, Mandy Singer speaks about a lot of different things. She also verifies some evidence that I didn't want to put on the internet. I'll probably end up having to anyway, but the problem with that is some of that evidence I risk getting kicked off of Facebook or YouTube for showing it. When I say people did some pretty nasty shit, I mean it. So, now that I've learned how to take the screenshots, I can actually go through some of my older videos. The parts that I talk about, I can actually show the evidence of it. It'll take, God, if I'm able to sit there without having a panic attack, it'll take probably 5 or 6 hours per recording. Alright, so let's get to the Lincoln Corrections Center. The whole time I was there, I was telling them same thing I say everywhere. We need body cameras. It's not that we need more laws to make something illegal that's already illegal. They make it even more illegal to do these things every 10 years like clockwork, but nothing changes because there's still no way to enforce it. There's 2 prisons that I was sent to, and mind you, I was not convicted of a thing. I had made YouTube videos where I had explained that I was trying to turn in Leslie Smanell, Robert Warnick for an assault. Of course, Scott DaCosta, everybody knew I'd been trying to turn in since 2018. That's the sheriff in Chapel, Nebraska. God, what a horrible place. So Scott DaCosta finally got fed up with it. December 16th of 2020, I believe. Scott DaCosta and a Nebraska State Patrolman by the name of Lassen took part in assaulting me for trying to turn in Scott DaCosta. Something that I had been trying to do since 2018 and had been entirely and completely ignored by those who were supposed to investigate it. I had no assistance at all. Matter of fact, they did everything that they could to look the other way, no matter what. A tactic that I'm having to endure here in Oregon. Well, tactics. Now, in these officers' eyes, they've done no wrong. They're just following their training and their procedure. The thing is that their training and their procedure is different when there is somebody there who actually cares about you and your well-being and cares about the truth and justice, for God's sake. We can't just allow these things to happen to innocent people just because you want to assume. We can't just force innocent people to do such desperate things to try to get help. There's a lot of things that these YouTube channels get completely wrong. Then again, so did the courts. But you know what? The courts did so intentionally. See, all they had to do was slander my name, destroy my name, and people will hate me. People will be afraid to help me. And you know what? They had every reason to be afraid to help me. Especially right at the beginning. You see how many people dipped out because people were threatening their lives? God, that's some horrible shit. That right there, that situation right there, Candace Bondurant was not the only one who told me that she was being threatened and that they had threatened to kill her kids. Now, Candace didn't tell me that anybody threatened to kill her kids. That was Cara Rogers, I believe was her real last name. She went by Karamia. Now, since then, she's tried to destroy her account, but I already got screenshots of a bunch of stuff. I mean, I don't know what the hell was wrong with that lady. A lot of these assholes that promise to help, I think their heart's still in the right place. I think if I dragged Shannon Alvarado's ass into court, that she would definitely tell the truth, at least there. I think she'd be very pissed off and very angry. Do I think that Rick would tell the truth in a court of law? No, not by any stretch or measure. See, while I understand both their situations with each other, I also understand my situation with having severe PTSD. It is severe. Now, with these officers here, I'm afraid of them for two reasons. Number one, because of what other officers did, and that's not right, is it? Number two, because they're doing the same things and saying the same things that all of the officers in all of these places did. This is their tactics when it's just you trying to turn someone in. You never get to the point of actually turning in the crime because you're too busy getting talked over. Or they pull shit out of their ass that is so fucking cockamamie. Like, why the hell, if I'm telling you about abuse that I'm going through, I'm trying to turn it in. You're the people I'm told that I got to talk to try to turn it in. The last thing I need to hear out of your stupid face is, well, I didn't do it to you. So let's get to my predators in the prison. They're not just my predators, they're many people's predators. The people that I had to try to turn it into, and I have all of these people's paperwork, by the way. I wrote down their names. I wrote about all of the abuse in there that I possibly could. And I got in trouble for writing about abuse against other inmates. In Nebraska, they have what's called the County Safe Keep program. Basically, if your county don't have a jail, or they're cheapskates, or they don't want to take you, well, all these places know that violating my rights is a bad idea, and I'm going to be very loud about it. Scott DaCosta had already decided to have me sent to Lincoln, to the prison. He'd already made the decision and decided it with the judge, and that can be proven using the cameras, body cameras or otherwise, with audio recording that are supposed to be on at all times in the Garden County Jail. So you'll get to hear that Scott DaCosta had already planned on sending me to Lincoln. This is Scott DaCosta, literally the guy that had assaulted me just a little over a month earlier and arrested me. What was I in the process of doing at that point in time? Still trying to get Nebraska State Patrol to do their fucking jobs and investigate DaCosta. So I had to announce exactly what I was doing, that I was trying to turn in evidence to the Nebraska State Patrol. Nebraska State Patrol did not fulfill their end of the bargain, and they didn't keep their end of the deal. They didn't keep their word, and that's something that really is freakishly not right. Why did they ignore me between, what was it, 3rd of July or 4th of July of 2018, all the way until Scott DaCosta and a Nebraska State Patrolman assaulted me? They also misled the situation with Stephanie Mejia. That was Bill Burr, and I've got recordings with him as well. Bill Burr supposedly turned in the stuff that I was trying to turn in against Scott DaCosta. But when I talked to the lady who it was supposed to have been sent to, the one whose name that he dropped in that very same day that I was assaulted by Scott DaCosta and Deputy Lassen, Sorry, State Patrolman last. When he pulled a George Floyd with his knee on the back of my neck. Not cool. So, Sergeant Jones was supposed to investigate it. She was supposed to show up, I believe, on that Thursday we had agreed upon. And the thing that was messed up is that she was saying that if there's evidence of crimes on there, that they're going to have to take all of my stuff. I'm like, you don't need to take all my stuff. I just didn't know how to do it electronically. So, of course, Meg was going to help me to do it electronically. At that point in time, that was with the assault with Robert Warnick, and of course, I'm being forced to go to the very sheriff and his deputies who have taken part in this bullshit since 2018, who have helped people who assaulted me to get away with it. Helped Robert Warnick get away with not only threatening and harassing and stalking me for over a year before he assaulted me, and they wouldn't do shit. They didn't even try talking to Robert Warnick. This is a man who is on the Nebraska Sex Offender Registry for sexual assault against a child. So when I was in the Lincoln prison, first they send me to the DEC. I should really go through everything that happened at Garden County and everything that happened at Scotts Bluff and everything that happened with the Dual County deputies and the conversations that we had. And also Brenda, the lady that was the driver that actually took me to the prison in Lincoln. She was also one of the two drivers who drove me back. She was a very nice lady. She also seemed to understand quite a bit. There was a lot of abuse in both of those places. Now, when they get to the DEC, basically they try to... It's the Diagnostic and Evaluation Center, but it's not a hospital. This is a place where it is assumed that you're guilty when you get there because it is a prison, and a county safekeep is not convicted. Now, because you're stuck in quarantine, they won't let you use the phone. Now, at this point, I already knew that they were pulling some messed up stuff, especially with Leslie Snell. That's what really broke the camel's back. When Leslie Snell repeatedly tried to give out my phone number in the same phone call after knowing, and she is recorded on my YouTube channel, which she did at our court date, is an outright lie. And the fact that her voice is recorded on my YouTube showing what she did is extremely important in this. My public pretender wouldn't do anything. He said he wasn't assigned to that. They wouldn't allow me any of the paperwork or any of the information that I needed to get the hell out of there or to send that stuff off. They were regulating who I could or could not send my mail to. And they were telling me that I couldn't send my mail to the people that I needed to send the mail to. They needed to verify stuff with my public pretender, Robert Harvoy, who almost 40 days it took to be allowed to call Robert Harvoy. Robert Harvoy had let me know basically from very start he wasn't willing to defend me and he wasn't going to make any efforts to do so. The thing is that everything that I had to do in desperation was after trying everything else, after going to the professionals, after going to all the people that you're supposed to. Now in the jail we got Sergeant June. And Sergeant June is quite an asshole. Or in the prison, sorry. But that's not at the DEC. The DEC, basically, I was supposed to go to a mental hospital for a psych evaluation. The mental hospital that they have, you're allowed access to the computers, you're allowed to work on your case. That's not what they did with me. They made sure that I was sent to the prison, and that I was denied access to everything that you are supposed to be allowed access to, including legal materials. They repeatedly tortured me physically and psychologically in there. Refused to allow me basic amenities. Went out of their way to pretend I said things that I didn't so they could do things that were definitely not okay. Now, they were told that I was schizophrenic when I was first sent in there. By the time I left, none of the doctors that I visited with were willing to call me schizophrenic. Now, the abuse that I endured in there, it's not okay, but they got away with it. They got away with it by antagonizing inmates, and there's no body cameras, so they can get away with this. You try to get a hold of the guard when they walk by your cell, but they outright ignore you like you don't exist. And then you're told, oh, well, you just need to get a hold of the guard when they go by your cell. They go by every 30 minutes. No, they don't. If you're telling me that I can get a hold of them every 30 minutes and they're ignoring me when they walk by my cell, every day, same thing, day in and day out. Those guards treating you like an animal. And you got rights. Sure, you got rights on paper. But prison ain't on paper, it's in real life, where people hold bias. There's a lot of foreign people that work there, and you know, I've never really had a distaste for immigrants. I never had a distaste for anybody from a particular area, or a distaste for people from a particular region of the world. But I gotta tell you, you know, it seems to me that even immigrants, when given a position of power, are just like anybody else in this country. You don't have to observe their rights because nobody cares and there's no way to record it. That makes it their word versus mine, and that's not okay. A lot of the abuse I tried to report to Miranda Knudsen and also to Sarah Nelson, who outright ignored it. I got to meet Sarah Nelson the day before I was actually transferred out of it. So I'd already been there almost 6 months by the time I finally met Sarah Nelson. I already knew what she was about, though. See, these guards, they antagonize the shit out of you. They think it's funny. They think it's a big joke. They get hired basically because nobody wants to work that job, especially after the COVID thing. Now, there was a guy by the name of Jensen. And there was also Nawid and Masudi and God, there's one more guy. I'm trying to remember his name because he was like probably the worst one as far as antagonizing me. But I got their names written down in the massive pile in the back of my vehicle. What I want to do right now is tell you about some of the inmates. The guards don't just threaten and harass and intimidate you and assault you and pretend like you're resisting or whatever the hell else. They also get the other inmates involved with it. You give the inmates something a little extra if they take care of that guy. I don't mean take care of it by, well, slipping out of their cell and chopping me up or anything. There was only one incident where they tried to make that scenario happen. I'm a little smarter than they are. There's a guy by the name of Jared Checkle, and he's a witness in that, and he needs to be kept safe because he can verify the situation there with the guards and the inmates where Masudi and several other guards tried to create a situation where I was, well, it's tough to kill a man who sees it coming. The fact they turned the volume all the way down on the TV and let those inmates do and say whatever they wanted. They were trying to instigate a fight and get a fight happening because those guards fucking hated me. And for good reason, God damn it. I wasn't convicted of shit. I was in there as a county safekeep. But then again, Scott DaCosta got to be in charge of all of that. The very man that had assaulted me, who I had been trying to turn in for several years by this point, he gets to be in charge of everything, including my evidence. Now, they had to eventually drop the charges. They had already slandered my name just a little bit more, and this is such a popular thing to do. But then again, why do they keep having to drop the charges and let me go? They pulled that crap in South Dakota. Turns out, I was telling the truth. I got the recordings with Chris Stegeman. I got the recordings with Jamie's son. I got recordings with several members of Todd Russ' family who were aware of his little vacation up there. I got recordings with James Payton. What more is needed? When it comes to the abuse in the prison there, Sarah Nelson is on her way to prison. I told on her, by the way. I told on a lot of people. Two of the people that need to leave there as soon as possible. One of them is Mr. Nutsi, or Miss Nutsi, and Mr. New Year. Mr. New Year cannot be allowed to run anything in there. Absolutely not. When you're in charge of a particular section of that there prison, there are certain things you do not do. You don't put Wesley Reiner, inmate number 88958. Wesley Reiner had a 3-year-old brother that he decided it was okay to do things that you don't do. You don't put a pedophile in a cell next to me. That's not a smart idea. That's not a good idea. Don't do it. Now, they put me in cells where I was literally, the whole time I was there, I was never in general population. They weren't going to allow it. They made sure that I was locked up in with the crazy people to begin with. It's because that's where they were told to put me by Scott DaCosta. But then the doctors said, well, we're sorry, but, you know, we've been here for a few months and he's not crazy, he's not delusional, he's not schizophrenic. We can't keep him in the crazy section of the prison. We have to put him somewhere else. But also the guards are all afraid of him. So we have to put him over in restrictive housing. I wonder why all the guards were afraid of me. I kept telling on them. They kept retaliating, and I kept telling on them. Sometimes they retaliated physically. Sometimes they met the challenge psychologically. They always did it as a group. There's no chance in hell that any one of those guards... Oh, Donald. Yes. I just wish I could remember his last name at the moment. Thank goodness it's written in there. God, I want to remember his last name. He said he was in the Air Force. This guy, when the Boulder shooting happened to King Soopers, this guy was talking about shooting me. Even stopped pushing the cart long enough to pretend like he was holding a rifle. The guards there, they work together. They have what's called a use of force. This is the only time that they use actual cameras with sound recording. Use of force. That's after the guards have antagonized you enough that they have decided that they're going to come in and they're going to spray you in the face with some stuff. Whew. I got to tell you, they didn't like that experience either. Was I violent with them? Absolutely not. But Jesus, fuck, those guys are violent. They literally tore the clothes off of my body. Tore them. Have you ever had somebody yank the clothes off of your body? I'm not talking about pulling them down and off. I'm talking about they literally shredded my clothes, tearing them off of my body, while holding me down, applying as much pain as they could to pressure points, and literally yank, 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 yank. And I gotta tell you, you know, when they yank on you like that, you end up with not just bruising, but you end up with scabs in places. Places you don't want them. And they know full well what they're doing. There was one lady there named Blackwell. She might be willing to come forward. She's a good-natured lady, mostly. She's a lesbian and she loves her dogs. She drives from Omaha to Lincoln every single day to go to work. She's the one person everybody wants to talk to. She's not the prettiest guard. She's not the skinniest guard. But you know what? She is the nicest. There's also Blue the Fifth. Now, this guy right here, he was one of the guards. He was pretty nice. On several occasions when other guards were engaging in threatening or harassing or intimidating or attempting to goat me, he told them to stop. He was one of the few guards that actually did that. The rest of them, they automatically take the guard's side. Automatically, the guard wins. Another thing they like to do is they'll have this mock court for you. You're not allowed to go. I'm not a convicted felon. They're not allowed to do this shit. It's unconstitutional. Until they have convicted me of a felony, and I am in that prison convicted as a convicted felon, they have to afford me my rights, and they didn't. By law, they had to take me to a mental hospital in order to have the evaluation, and they never did. They never intended to. Also, Dual County is not allowed to process electronic evidence. They have to send it to North Platte. They didn't send it to North Platte. They never sent it to North Platte. You guys should ask James Hammond about that. Good thing to ask. Oh, before you ask, it's not a beer. It's a Monster Java. I got the names buried back there in the pile. But I got the tactics. Same stuff pretty much everywhere. It's bad enough that they do this stuff to human beings. Whether those people are guilty or not is arbitrary. One of the guys in there, he was in there because he blew a guy's head off trying to steal a van. The guy tried to slam on the brakes and the thing went off, and he's got to serve another pretty decently long time. When Officer Donald kept on coming by after they transferred me off of his ward, he made sure that he made a special trip every single day to come by and antagonize me. every single day. The guards also like to come in and antagonize me about Natalie Bollinger. I gotta tell you, that didn't work out well for them. They chose to get violent, I didn't. But no matter what, everybody pulled the mentally ill thing and ignored everything I had to say. And meanwhile, the very officer I was trying to turn in, the guy who was the boss there in Chapel, Nebraska, Scott DaCosta, got to be in charge of everything. Meanwhile, his friends are all the people that get to decide whether or not I'm even allowed medical access, which I wasn't. The doctor said on several occasions that I did need to see a doctor at the hospital. He also said that Dual County declined. Well, hold on a second. If it's severe enough that you can take me from the prison to a hospital and you're recommending it, that means that it's life-threatening. Are you telling me that Dual County refused to do anything about life-threatening injuries? I had Medicaid or Medicare, I can't remember which. If I hadn't been locked up on bogus charges, I could have gone to the hospital on my own instead of being repeatedly physically assaulted by guards. That's right. You know how many of the inmates in there physically assaulted me? None. Not a single one. A lot of them threatened to. There was only one situation where the guards were trying to set up a situation. There was two of the inmates. Both of them were in there for murder. And both of them, they made sure that the chains and the chairs were close enough that they could, if they wanted to, and they were definitely wanting to, do something they shouldn't. They even turned down the volume on the TV. Now, Jared Checkle was a witness to this situation. Now, I don't know how you guys feel about the situation, but I don't believe that prison guards telling inmates that you're a pedophile is acceptable, especially when you're not. I've literally never been charged with a crime against a child. Literally not happened. Not child abuse, not child endangerment, not neglect. Nothing. Unlike Robert Warnick. The fact that I sat in prison because I tried to tell on actual predators like Robert Franklin Warnick, and the fact that he got to assault me, he got to get a freebie when I got out of prison. When in reality, he should have still been in prison because he had assaulted me. But you know what? Dual County Sheriff's Department did everything they could to help him out. Do you not understand how inappropriate it is for me to have to go to the people that I'm trying to turn in the assaults against me? They are obviously going to help my goddamn predators. This is not fucking okay. They have their little kangaroo court. They won't even tell you about it, or they'll come up to your cell and antagonize you like assholes. And then they'll go, oh, that's a denial. And then they go have court without you and find you guilty. They're not even allowed to fucking go. You're supposed to have this right and that right. According to their handbook, you're supposed to have these rights. When you're getting assaulted by the guards and you've got Miranda Nuzzi who's answering these things, yeah, they ignore all of the physical violence, all of the physical abuse. The guards love to antagonize certain people. They're abusive as all hell to one of the racists that's in there. The problem is that makes it bad for all of us. And then they make excuses for it. Like, no. By the time I got shipped out of there, they were blaming me. No matter who it was that was being loud on the block, they were blaming me. Also, by the time I left there, I was flooding out my cell. See, the paper stuff is all ignored and blown off. They always got some bullshit excuse for every goddamn thing. Somehow, magically, it's okay for them to abuse you. I'm fighting hard to make sure that all of these jails and all of these prisons have to have body cameras. And have to have them all on at one time. I think that all of them, every single one of them, should be checked and made sure and verified that it works. I think they should turn it on and check it before every shift, and I believe that it should be on for the entire shift. Having to turn in the guards to Sergeant June, Sergeant June's just going to throw it away. You're supposed to be able to write a kite or write a complaint, and it's supposed to be private. But because you are one of the people that is in isolation, you're in a cell all by yourself. You might get a half of an hour out every other day. This is not a nice place, and the people that are locked up next to you are not known for doing nice things. Then, of course, there's the Haldol epidemic. Oh my God. So you got all these guys that they start acting quote unquote normal. They start talking about stuff that's real. And then it's time for their Haldol shot. And then for 3 to 5 days, you get the craziest talking people on the planet, talking all sorts of crazy stuff about the cosmos and the universe and how they're Jesus and how they're God and how, oh my God, what the hell? What are you putting that in human beings for? There's a reason. While I was there, Ted Hill and Dr. Sears were the ones who got to decide whether or not I was on medications. And Ted isn't going to be the one who's going to make that decision. It's going to be Dr. Sears. Dr. Sears and Dr. Hill, that's Ted's last name, were both not happy at all. I guess that's an understatement. With the fact that that I was sent to them under the auspices of being schizophrenic, a paranoid schizophrenic. He said, I've been in this for a lot of years. This is Dr. Hill, of course. He was the one that I saw most while I was in there. He's in charge of the mental health ward, which is where I was sent. They were told that I was delusional and schizophrenic. They said this came directly from Deuel County, and he was not happy because I was not delusional nor schizophrenic. Imagine that. There's also several other doctors that I met with while I was in there, and those doctors also did not think that I was delusional or schizophrenic. One of them being Dr. Sears. He's the one who gets to decide who's going to take medications and who isn't. And Dr. Sears very much needs to take the stand. He very much needs to speak up about what he knows about the situation. He also understood that I'm actually quite well versed in his business. One of the doctors there, he seemed to hold another doctor in quite high regard because all the letters behind his name. But also, he did not agree with the doctor with all the letters behind his name, because the difference there was that the doctor with all the letters behind his name, here's the situation. I'd gotten assaulted by the guards over at the DEC. I'd been prevented from getting any sleep the night before. It was friggin' freezing. It was so cold. And thank goodness for Petra Barons. And oh man, I feel bad. That guy from Israel. When I remember his name, I'll tell you, because he was a pretty cool cat. There was also an inmate by the name of Tommy Manson, and he was actually slipping me envelopes. But the problem is, they told me the envelopes are regulated, and so if I try to send out more than they'd given me, that I was going to have my mail privileges taken away. So I basically had letters that I couldn't send out. The only person I was able to call was Dallas Richmond, and I only got a 1-minute phone call with him. Later, when I had money on my phone, I tried calling him and letting him know, hey, you could probably get me out. Turns out you have to go all the way there in person. You have to go all the way to the prison. That's a 9-hour drive. Dallas can't do that. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, those false charges made everything an imposition. Trying to get my money back. Trying to get my Medicare or Medicaid or whatever back. How am I going to do that? They took that away because I was locked up in prison. Meg Misigatis, thank goodness, she helped me to get that back. But she needs to speak out. I mean, not just writing a letter to a judge who's not going to look at it. Not just trying to explain it to my public pretender who he absolutely refused to work with her. Guess who also refused? Penny Cooper. That's right. She kept on wanting to deter me from working with Meg. Well, Meg made mistakes. She might admit that she made mistakes. Who knows? I'm hoping she's a good person like she says she is. See, when you make mistakes or you misunderstand something, especially something that I'm saying outright and blatantly, maybe you should listen to me instead of treating me like I'm an autistic retard. And the prisons, God, they were horrible. They just treated me like I was the worst kind of monster ever. And I'll tell you what, I'd gladly go back to save lives. If they want to send me back to prison for protecting your kids, for helping to find your kids, for protecting at-risk adults, for trying to do something about this human trafficking and this corruption, and for showing why they get away with it so easily, the term mentally ill, then you gotta go into all the socioeconomic issues. When you're in prison, you're in an autocratic dictatorship. The bosses are in command. You know who the bosses are? That'd be the jail guards. I mean, don't get me wrong, on a regular cell block, there are individual inmates that run the shit, but you know what? When you're in the individual lockdowns like I was in, every time you go from your cell to the shower, you're in shackles, hands and feet. Little chain around your waist that attaches your wrist to your waist. Guards repeatedly made excuses to assault me and then later tried to cover it up. In order to do that, you need 3 people in specific to very much be on your side. You need Miranda Knudsen, or Knudse, I can't remember which. You need Mr. New Year. very important as well. And you need Mr. Jensen on your side. You know, those three guys, they're horrible people. Everybody else will follow suit. Those three guys say to do something, the other guards are going to do it. If they tell an inmate that they'll give that inmate special privileges like they did with Wesley Reiner, 88958, they put him in a cell next to me and had him antagonize me for a few days straight. Also, when we had group, they'd walk him by and let him scream and antagonize me with Sergeant June, of course, and Sergeant June would want to yell some stuff back down. And then there was this sick son of a bitch. He was, I know his name started with an H. When I was telling him about the abuse that I'd gone through as a kid, he was smiling about it. Like, how can you be a mental health professional if you're gonna smile when somebody's telling you about their abuse? All of their answers are non-committal on paper. It's kind of like that officer the other day that I spoke with at the Starbucks. He wanted to tell me something wasn't illegal. I said, well, under these circumstances, and I spelled them out, and I asked him, is it illegal then? He didn't answer. Do you know why he didn't answer? Because he knew I was right. To be continually talked over by that guy is not okay. The fact that we didn't get to hardly pick up the conversation is also not okay. So I gotta try to jump through a bunch of hoops to get his body camera. That's gonna happen. Jared Checkle is another inmate. He's pretty important. There's the lunch tray issue. That's one of the things that they used to mess with the inmates the most. It was mostly Donald, Masudi, and Nawid that did that. There's also the, when they'd use other inmates to harass you and all that, usually it was an inmate worker. They would pick an inmate worker because inmate workers can travel freely throughout the place. Decently freely. Sarah Nelson, she was supposed to come talk to me nearly a dozen times and never did. None of these professionals ever came to speak with me. Well, she did the day before I left, finally. By that time, I had already tried to report her because her name was all over my paperwork. I'm trying to turn in abuse that inmates and staff are pulling on me, and they're forcing me to do some pretty desperate stuff in there. And of course, her name is all over my paperwork for disciplinary. You gotta love disciplinary, right? When it gets to the point where you're literally flooding your cell with your toilet to try to make sure that Mr. New Year shows up so that you can make sure and verify that what you got to say is heard, it's not. He's going to bullshit you. He's going to ignore it. He's going to let his employees and those under his command, because he is, high up there. He's actually in control of that whole section of the prison. Gets 2 whole blocks all to his own. Pretty screwed up. Anyway, between the mental health professionals and the guards that are in the prison, they have a lot of issues with one another. Ultimately, security, as it's called, gets to decide. That's the guards. There was a couple of doctors came and talked to me. They got into an argument with one of the guards who was bullying me over whether or not it was safe to open the door. You know what? If I was those guards, after what they did to me, I would be afraid to open the door too. If I was physically and psychologically torturing somebody who had been locked in a cell by themselves, yeah, I'd be afraid of opening the door. But that doctor wasn't. And I talked to that doctor. That's how I woke up that morning. That doctor yelling at security. God, I gotta tell you, that's just crazy. Hearing a doctor and one of the staff at a prison yelling at each other. And it was very loud. Everyone heard it. But you know what was louder than that? Me. The whole time I was in there. Everyone was sick of me. Everyone was sick of my mouth. They were sick of the fact that I wouldn't shut up about my goddamn rights. Well, guess what? You violate my rights, that's what I'm going to do. All these people who want to forget who I am. What's not registering in their heads is how hard I fought for their rights. That's what they want to forget about. They want to pretend that didn't exist. Because if they remember that shit, it really makes them feel bad. As far as the prisons go, they try to divide and conquer just like anywhere else. They try to tell one inmate one thing and another inmate another. They'll try to put you in the rec room next to two people who kill people. One of them who's a child rapist. Nasty. Now, I was able to get some of my garbage here cleared up a bit. Once I'm able to find a place to actually dump some of it, which I haven't found yet, I'll be able to dig out the actual names of some of these individuals, the actual dates that these situations happened. I'll also get to show you a stack of disciplinary referrals this big. Yeah, every time I told on them, they retaliated. Often more than once and in more than one way. And then there's these inmates been in there for years telling me, dude, you really love punishment, don't you? They're gonna kill you. You know that. I said, they can't kill me yet. They have to convict me before they can kill me. I'm still a county safekeep. Then they wanted to warn me about general population. You do that in general population, they'll kill you. They'll cut your throat. They'll stab you. They'll stuff your body in the shower. Like, they're not going to put me in general population. That's for certain. It was pretty easy to read who was going to do what. There's a lot of little tricks they do to prevent you from turning in your predators. Like when you try to turn in the guards who are doing that stuff. They'll come into your cell 6-on-1 and fucking assault you. They'll tell you they're going to do it, and then they'll go and get a camera and film themselves doing it. Well, they film themselves literally tearing my clothes off of my body. That is not the way that you treat a human being. You do not physically assault inmates. You do not sexually assault inmates. You do not psychologically torture people who have not been convicted of a crime. You do not deny an inmate their rights to legal materials. You do not antagonize and threaten an inmate day and night. You do not get inmates involved. You do not lie and slander about an inmate. to try to get other inmates hateful against them. Wesley Reiner, 88958. What did he do to his 3-year-old brother? Look his name up. Nebraska Sex Offender Registry. Look up the name Wesley Reiner. Look up the name Mark Richman, MarkReichman. Reiner, Wesley, Reiner, Wesley, Wesley. His first name is Leslie. Wesley, last name is Reiner. And then I want you to look up Robert Warnick. This is all under the Nebraska Sex Offender Registry. These people are verified and certified. Y'all need to stop treating me like I'm a liar. A lot of my predators are in jail. It's not just the police. Clearview Behavioral Health is permanently shut down. They killed a man doing what it is that I reported live on my YouTube about. I told you these things were happening, and nobody wanted to listen or pay attention until Tony Kovaleski, and then you still pretend that I'm schizophrenic for saying that they were doing the things that they literally killed a man doing. They literally killed a man doing the things that they did to me. And you still want to pretend that they would not or could not do those things when they are literally closed down for doing those things. It's not just the state of Colorado either. I told you about Ted Bollinger. And him with his guns, and him with his meth, and on multiple occasions since Natalie's death, he's gotten busted with guns and meth. I told you about Alicia Bollinger and her meth addiction, and sure enough, one of those times when she went missing and people were again threatening to kill me and my family because one of these fucking idiots who wanted to pretend that I'm a predator disappeared because of their own stupidity. She was with the man who, oh my God, the things that... So she gets in a high-speed chase on my birthday, October 18th of 2019. That's when Alicia Bollinger went missing on my birthday. She was in a high-speed chase through Oklahoma and Kansas while she wasn't allowed to leave the state of Colorado, and neither was her father. I was on a bus leaving from Brett Roloff's in Virginia, where he was sorting through his own feces for methamphetamines, on my way to go see Jamie Curtis and her son in Rapid City, South Dakota. I hadn't even gotten off the bus when I get a message from Bobby Forrest telling me that Alicia Bollinger is missing, and the first thing I did is start making videos. God damn it, find her. Get her safe. You don't want to see that, though. That's not the Sean Schwartz they portray in these videos, is it? They don't explain to any of you that I tried to give every last penny that I had to try to get her safe. I'm sorry I wasn't rich. You know what? I'm sorry I wasn't good looking. See, that part right there, I should have been superficial. I should have done everything that I could to make myself as pretty as possible. Then maybe people might listen. Before I got to talk to my first evaluation or whatever they had there, I've already been antagonized by the guards and the nurses This is the SNF, Specialized Nursing Floor. But it's not a hospital, okay? It's a prison. This is a warehouse, as Marcia Estrada explained it. It's a warehouse for human beings. Now, I've got recordings with me and Dallas and Harley where I'm trying to see if I can hire Harley to cut my hair right before I was taken to prison. And they tried to pretend like I was crazy because my hair was unkept. They literally woke me up to go talk to this guy. I had just woken up, and I've got a bunch of people who have been predatory towards me, standing in the doorway, staring at me, and I'm trying to do this evaluation. I just woke up. Now, all of the staff here have assumed that Scott DaCosta, who is the one who is in contact with all of them through all of this, the very man that I've been trying to turn in since 2018, lo and behold, he gets to be in charge of everything at the DEC and the LCC. LCC is Lincoln Correction Center. So as I'm explaining this stuff to this guy, and it's all stuff that I can verify, all stuff that I can prove, but I can't prove it to this guy. Why? Because all of my evidence has been stolen by Scott DaCosta by using slander, by using libel, by him running around town telling people that I was schizophrenic, running around town telling people he's going to kick me out of town, he's going to run me out of town, he's going to... Fuck you. Anybody who supports that. Him having me sent to another jurisdiction and them telling me that I can't turn him in because I'm in the wrong jurisdiction. Dallas ain't picking up the phone because he's fucking self-absorbed into his own fucking drinking. He can't pull himself out of that shit. Dallas isn't dependable for jack shit. He gets depressed and self-loathing and gets fucking drunk just like Harley does. The difference is he doesn't go running around looking for violence like she does. I never saw him throw anything at her. I saw her throw shit at him. Dallas being the only one I could get a hold of, and the situation with the first time that I had to talk to Dr. Letters behind his name, that doctor didn't look anything up. He didn't bother to find out if it was true or not. He just went off of the assumptions based on the information given to him, but that information was given to him by a predator who I had been trying to turn in since 2018. That would be Sheriff Scott DaCosta of Deuel County. So what did I lose at all that? Well, I lost my medical care. I lost my evidence. I lost my freedom, of course. But really, how can we call any of this freedom anyway? I was denied my rights to a fair trial, denied the right to go to court. By the time I left there wasn't a doctor in there that was willing to call me schizophrenic or delusional. Now those doctors told me that and the guards as well told me they're not allowed to testify unless they get permission from the facility. No. How can that be possible? Just like, how is it okay for them to hold court without me? And then how is it okay for them to have their little fake-ass kangaroo courts within the prison that I'm not allowed to go to? where they get to decide to deny me the right to use the telephone, or they get to deny me the right to use the mail, or any number of other things. They denied me everything that I needed to defend myself, and they just kept at it. This is what happens when you tell on law enforcement. Every little piggly, whether they're going to the market or not, is your motherfucking enemy at that point. That's what happens when you allow officers like Waylon Lolatai to assault people in Denver without criminal charges, and then you hire him on in Boulder, Colorado, and allow him to assault more people. And then you charge innocent people with assaulting a police officer. No, police officers are not fucking nice after that. Jail guards are not fucking nice after that. But I tell you what, I'd go back to jail if that's what it took to protect Amy Spencer's kids again. I'd go back to jail for them. That's right, I said back to jail, because that is what I had to do to get those girls safe. Calling the cops didn't do shit, whether I did it anonymously or otherwise. To get myself safe, and my little sister and my niece safe. You want to pretend for one moment that I wouldn't go back to prison and endure that torture again? I absolutely would. I've been to jail on multiple occasions since Natalie was killed to protect kids in some of these situations from their very own parents. Somebody's got to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, even if it's only me. When all these people say, I can't, get the fuck out of the way. Maybe you can't, but I can. I don't have children that I have to be afraid of losing. I don't have a drug habit to drown my sorrows in. I'm not choosing chasing tail over speaking out and doing what's right. When these cowards who are too afraid to even speak up want to tell me that I'm weak. No. I'm not weak. I grew up in the system, getting my ass beat for the color of my skin. I lost more fights than I won. I never liked violence. I never liked fighting. Ever. I felt bad for every person I ever fought with, whether I won or lost. I don't want to fucking hurt people. While somebody's beating on me, if I defend myself, whatever maneuver I use on them, I can imagine me being in that situation and I don't like it. I guess flashbacks is probably the best way to explain that one. Most of the dirty tricks that I use in fights are things that I learned from other people hurting me. That situation with the cops about how they hurt you and then pretend like you're resisting. If you're not moving, they'll hurt you more. They know how to use the cuffs and press your wrists into them. When you're being physically and psychologically tortured by the guards and your public pretender won't even hear it, you are literally tortured. Yeah, somebody needs to do something. Your public pretender is not even pretending to defend you. If you are being assaulted in jail and in prison and they're doing jack shit, they're not even showing up to court. They're not telling you the consequences of the acts that you're being asked to commit. My public pretenders asked me to do things that allowed continuances of things that would have been dropped that very day had my replacement public pretender not outright lied to me repeatedly and did not tell me the consequences. Meanwhile, turns out that they were a few days past anyway, so everything that they did was illegal anyway. But yes, I was physically and psychologically tortured into making a guilty plea. What I pled guilty to was a misdemeanor. But apparently, what they want to claim is that I'm wanted for a felony. I'm not wanted for a felony. I'm wanted for a local warrant. Fucking idiots. But just like the situation with Scott DaCosta, just like the situation with William Barr, just like the situation with Leslie Snell, their very own paperwork shows that they lied on their very own paperwork. My evidence shows they lied a whole lot in all of that paperwork. Also, that paperwork written by these people also verifies what I said about these people, and it goes to prove that these people are real people that actually exist and are not figments of my imagination. I've been telling you about William Barr since Natalie was killed. He was involved before she was killed. There's a lot of people that were involved before she was killed. With William Barr, not much. One situation on the 4th of July. That was before I even made the Virginia trip. But it's an important part of the story. That was after I became friends with her. It was after I went back to Chapel to try to recover from my back injury. People wanted to pretend I was schizophrenic for saying these people existed. Just like they wanted to pretend that I was either schizophrenic or delusional when I said that there was 94,000 views on one of my videos from around the time that Natalie was killed. Now, they would have gone ahead with Scott DaCosta's whole whatever, but my story didn't change. From when I got there to when I left there, my story did not change. Ted Hill actually looked into the situation, and so did one of the other doctors. I told him about the stuff on the internet. They actually looked it up. So did a man by the name of Joe Hall. Joe Hall used to be a social worker in King County, Washington, a place that I was familiar with before I met him. Joe Hall and I had many conversations. He wanted to try to help me. I told him the only way he could help me is by speaking out. He was afraid of losing his job if he did that, but he was willing to try to bend the rules a little bit to try to get a hold of Meg. He knew that my constitutional rights and my legal rights were being violated, and he didn't like it one bit. Oh my God, that hurts. They got social workers in there too, and I let the social workers know that I needed to talk to Tara Smith, that, I'd tried to turn in Scott DeCosta and his deputies to Tara Smith on multiple occasions prior. And in the recordings that I have with her that are on YouTube, it shows that. It shows her, not only, you can hear her speaking in it, obviously. It's a conversation with her. And with Tara Smith, when we're having our conversation, she's also admitting that I had met with her once before. Problem is, when you go into a small town department and these guys are all buddies with each other, they got no problems breaking the law to cover each other's asses. And when you got law enforcement like that, you don't have law enforcement. You got good old boys. You know where else you find that mentality? The KKK. Nebraska's largest collection of KKK memorabilia was found in the attic of the county prosecutor's office. His name was Joel J. That was the first county prosecutor that I went to about the abuse by Scott DeCosta. He didn't do his job. He didn't care. None of them did. They just blew me off and made every excuse. They always do that. It's always the same thing. Everyone does the same thing. You don't care what the victim has to say. You don't want to fucking hear it. You just want them to shut up and take it, so you can go on with your life and smile about it. When you ask them if they're okay and they say no, you treat them like shit for being negative. Well, they're still going through the abuse, motherfucker. Desiree is somebody I'm extremely pissed off at. Desiree Leonard. I rescued her from a trap house in Cheyenne, Wyoming, not once but twice. She's recorded and on my YouTube as well. One of those situations, she was tripping balls. When I say I was forced into dangerous situations because law enforcement didn't want to do their job, I meant it. Scott DeCosta went out of his way to protect his officers who had literally committed felonies. That's right, felonies. Abusing their power the way that they did. They should have been smart enough to cover it up a little better, though. Like the fact that they verified so many of the stories that I told on YouTube and Facebook that people were treating me like I was crazy for. They admitted to those things. Admitted to those things in their court paperwork. That only helps me, but only if people take a look. Only if people speak out. Only if people share it. Some people tell me stuff like, well, Sean, at least you have the peace of mind that you told the truth. Peace of mind, that's not going to bring anybody back. That's not going to change the laws that killed them, or the lack thereof. In most of these cases, it's not a lack of laws to protect them, it's a lack of enforcement. When you're going to trust these people's oaths over electronic equipment, well, it just goes to show that we're witch hunting. It's got nothing to do with right or wrong. It's got nothing to do with what's legal and what ain't. It comes down to billing acceptability. Fritz Sauckel and the Nazis, they modeled their forced labor program. Fritz Sauckel and Heinrich Himmler in specific pioneered the forced labor program in what was basically occupied Europe at the time. It was all Germany, basically. That was modeled after the chain gangs here in the United States. The chain gangs were formed because immediately after the North freed the South, they made the 13th Amendment, which of course freed all of the slaves except if they're convicted of a crime. And of course, the first laws passed made it completely illegal for every aspect of homelessness. So now you've got 4 million homeless black people who used to be slaves yesterday, and today they're all criminals. Now, the modern system that we have today is based off of Fritz Sauckel and the Nazi Party. The only difference is if you can keep your product alive, you can get more out of it. You can make more profit. If you don't have to work your laborers to death, if you can get that free labor and then get that free labor again next week and get that free labor again, it's a lot less expensive in human cost. What we need these cops and these agencies to do, including the prisons, is to pull their heads out of their asses and throw their assumptions away. There should have been better communication between the police department and the developmental housing place and myself. I felt the vehicle move. I'm not sure if it was a gust of wind or if it was something with my engine, but I wanted to make sure that it wasn't nothing major. It wasn't like a big movement, so. Anyway, when it comes to human rights, when it comes to your own rights, when it comes to mine, if you don't exercise your First Amendment and you're going to look away while other people's First Amendment rights are violated, well, my predators don't care about the law. My predators don't care about the First Amendment. Hell, they don't even care about the Second Amendment. If we abolished the Second Amendment, they'd still have access to guns. Myself, being a Nebraskan, I'll always have access to guns. So why don't I get busted carrying around guns all over the place? Why am I not in trouble for pointing guns in people's faces and threatening people and shooting people? And what the hell for? I'm going to tell you something about the last gun I had in my hands. If you were to send it to a United States armory, they still couldn't fix it. If you've got a firearm and it's legal and you want me to work on it, well, that guy ruined it for everybody. I'm not going to fix anybody's guns ever again. I refuse. I don't like being taken advantage of. I don't like people blackmailing me for doing them favors. I don't like prison, but if that's what it takes to get these human traffickers locked up, well, let's do it. You want to put me in solitary for the next 40 years until I die of a heart attack? Well, I probably won't last another 10 years with my dad's genetics. Let's get this party started. You know, Susie, when she killed Bob Mick, Susie used to be my neighbor. That happened after Natalie was killed, of course. I liked Susie. I didn't like Bob. One of the ladies that I stayed with in Pueblo, She killed her daughter a year to the day after Natalie was killed. Sorry, killed her son. Starved him to death. While I was there at Sally Treon's, that lady was still pregnant. She was a meth addict. The old woman who dragged Sally Treon's daughter through the house and kicked her in the face, another meth addict. You know how scary a situation that was for me. Meanwhile, their normal tone of voice is to scream at one another. I'm not allowed to have any sort of response to these people being volatile. I'm not allowed to respond to them being angry and hateful. Those of you who have ever stood up to an alcoholic abuser, you know exactly what the hell I'm talking about. I had to be afraid for my evidence everywhere that I went that there was an alcoholic or somebody on drugs. There's a lot of officers that I told on that are sitting in jail or prison. There's also places like Clearview where at least half a dozen of the people that work there belong in prison. They did commit felonies. That's where people who commit felonies belong. See, that's something that a lot of y'all just don't want to pay any goddamn attention to. A lot of this stuff that's misdemeanors, if you do them to somebody who's disabled, automatically become felonies, and they also come with mandatory sentences. You know what a mandatory sentence is, right? That means it comes with a prison sentence no matter what. My dad served 5 years on a mandatory minimum of 12 years because he was pardoned by the governor of Wyoming. Being pardoned does not mean that they find you not guilty or that they absolve you of your crimes. All it means is that, well, basically your conviction stands, but they either don't have enough room in the prisons or you've been a model enough citizen to get the hell out of there. Or he rolled on somebody. That was probably the case in my dad's situation. When it comes to human lives, shit, I'll roll on my own mother. She'd do the same thing to me over far less. If telling the truth about my mother will save people's lives, I'll tell the truth about my own mother. If telling on my little brother will save lives, I'll tell on my little brother. My older brother, Eric, he's a fucking moron. But he's not horrible like the other two. He's just an idiot. Like I said, you can look the names up. Sarah Nelson, Michelle Decini, Robert Warnick, Mark Richmond, Wesley Reiner. Look them up. Look up Chapel, Nebraska KKK. You'll enjoy that one. Good old boys are alive and well in this country. I always thought getting a couple busloads of black folks having a barbecue in Chapel, Nebraska might teach some of them ignorant rednecks that black people are people too. There's no guarantee of it though. That is something I'd been asking for a while though. I think the first time I ever said I was openly that I thought it was a good idea to bring in a couple of busloads of the folks that they hate, I'm pretty sure I was still in high school. Anyway, I gave you a small brief on some of the tactics. I'm going to probably write down and categorize the different types of abuse that they use in there, and in specific who their targets were. There was 3 of us who were real big targets. There's also a lady who worked there. Her name was Ware, W-A-R-E. She was nasty. Also, Wesley Reiner was her pet. It was disgusting.